I believed I had the perfect wife. She always said I was the only man in her life. Then I received an anonymous letter. She thought I would never find out. But I didn't just discover her secret, I made sure she destroyed herself. Sarah and I had been together for 6 years, 3 of them married. Everything in our life seemed picture perfect, our Victorian house in a quiet Boston suburb, our shared dreams of starting a family, our weekend traditions of farmers market visits and cooking elaborate Sunday dinners together. She was my college sweetheart, the woman who stood by me through my father's death and my struggling years at law school. I thought I knew everything about her. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. A plain white envelope, no return address, no postmark. Inside was a single printed page that would shatter my world. "You're the best lover I've ever had. He has no idea how incredible you are in bed. I can't wait to feel your body against mine again." My hands trembled as I read the messages over and over. The rational part of my brain tried to dismiss it as a cruel prank, but deep down, I knew. The way the words were written, the intimate details, it all felt painfully real. And there was a name that kept appearing in the messages: Brian. Brian Thompson. Sarah's colleague from the marketing department. The one she'd been having late meetings with, the one whose name kept popping up in her stories about work. I'd even met him at the company Christmas party, tall, confident, with perfect teeth and a designer watch. He'd shaken my hand firmly while complimenting my wife's presentations. Now I wondered if he'd been thinking about her in his bed while looking me in the eye. I could have confronted her immediately. I could have thrown the letter in her face and demanded answers. But that would have been too easy. Too quick. No, I wanted something more. I wanted her to experience the same slow, crushing realization of betrayal that I was feeling. I wanted her to destroy herself. The first step was surveillance. I told Sarah I was upgrading our home security system. She actually thanked me for being so thoughtful. The cameras went everywhere: living room, kitchen, hallway, even our bedroom. The feed went directly to my phone. I also installed a keylogger on our shared computer and a GPS tracker on her car. Knowledge is power, and I intended to know everything. It only took 2 days before my worst fears were confirmed. I was supposed to be at a client meeting, but I sat in my car 3 blocks away, watching the feed on my phone. Brian's silver Audi pulled into our driveway at 2:15 p.m. Sarah let him in wearing that red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. They didn't even make it upstairs at first. They were all over each other in our kitchen, the same kitchen where we'd made breakfast together that morning. I watched it all. Every kiss, every touch, every betrayal. They used our bed, the one we'd picked out together at Pottery Barn. She served him wine in our wedding crystal. And the worst part? The way they laughed together, sharing private jokes, so comfortable in their deceit. She played with his hair the same way she used to play with mine. But I didn't let my anger show. When Sarah came home that evening, I greeted her with a kiss and asked about her day. She told me about a challenging client meeting with a straight face. I smiled and nodded, all while imagining what was coming next. Phase 2 was gathering evidence. I hired a private investigator to document their meetings outside of work. I gained access to her secret messaging account. She'd used our dog's name as the password, of all things. I downloaded everything: the explicit photos, the love notes, the plans they made while I was supposedly working late. I tracked their restaurant receipts, hotel stays, all paid for with our joint account. My lawyer friend helped me document everything properly. We'd need it all later. But I wanted more than just a divorce. I wanted her entire carefully constructed life to crumble around her. I started planning what I called Operation Avalanche. First, I anonymously informed the HR department about their workplace relationship, providing just enough evidence to start an investigation. Then I reached out to Brian's wife. Yes, he was married too. I didn't tell her everything yet, just planted seeds of doubt. I wanted all the pieces in place for the grand finale. Sarah's birthday was approaching. She always loved throwing big parties, inviting everyone who mattered in her life. This year would be special, I made sure of it. I helped her plan everything, the catering, the decorations, the guest list. I even insisted Brian and his wife should come, after all, he's such an important colleague. The party was in full swing. 40 people packed into our house, family, friends, co-workers. Sarah was radiant in a new black dress, playing the perfect hostess. Brian kept his distance, playing the role of casual acquaintance while his wife watched him like a hawk. My earlier hints had worked their magic. At precisely 9:30 p.m., I stood up to make my toast. The room quieted down as I held up my glass. Sarah beamed at me from across the room, probably expecting another one of my heartfelt speeches about our love story. If only she knew. I'd like to make a toast to my beautiful wife, I began, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Sarah, you've made the last 6 years of my life extraordinary. Your love, your dedication, your honesty. I paused deliberately on that last word. You always say that marriage is built on trust, don't you, honey? She nodded, still smiling, though I caught a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. Brian shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his wife's hand gripping his arm a little too tightly. And you've always been so generous, I continued, sharing everything we have. Our home, our bed. Another pause. Sarah's smile wavered. In fact, you've been sharing quite a lot lately, haven't you? The room grew very still. I could hear ice cubes clinking in glasses, the soft hum of the air conditioning, someone's nervous cough. I've prepared a special presentation to celebrate just how giving my wife is. I pulled out the remote control from my pocket and pointed it at our large TV screen. Let's all watch together, shall we? The screen flickered to life. The first image was innocent enough, Sarah letting Brian into our house. Then came the kiss in the kitchen. The groping on our stairs. Their passionate encounter in our bed. The sound was off, but their body language said everything. The reactions came in waves. First, gasps of shock. Then uncomfortable murmurs. Sarah's mother burst into tears. Her father, a retired military man who'd always treated me like a son, stood up so abruptly his chair fell backward. Brian's wife screamed one word, bastard. And slapped him hard across the face. Sarah sat frozen, her face drained of color. Brian had already bolted for the door, but 2 of my friends, who I'd briefed beforehand, blocked his exit. But wait, I said, raising my voice above the chaos. There's more. Sarah, would you like to explain the charges to our joint account? The hotel rooms? The expensive gifts? Or should we ask HR about all those late-night meetings? I walked over to her, placing a thick manila envelope on the table. Divorce papers. Sign them now, or tomorrow this video goes viral. Your choice. The room had emptied quickly after that. Some people slipped out awkwardly, others stormed out in disgust. Sarah's parents left without looking at her. Brian was cornered in the foyer by his wife and her brother, who looked ready to rearrange his face. Sarah sat at the dining table for hours after everyone left, mascara streaking her cheeks, signing paper after paper with trembling hands. I watched her from across the room, feeling nothing but a cold satisfaction. But that was just the beginning. The next few weeks unfolded exactly as I'd planned. The HR investigation revealed their inappropriate use of company resources and time. Both Sarah and Brian were terminated. His wife filed for divorce the same day as I did, using the evidence I'd gathered to go after everything he owned. Sarah's carefully curated social media presence imploded as fragments of the video mysteriously found their way to key people in her circle. Her closest friends ghosted her. The charity board she sat on asked her to step down. Even her yoga studio revoked her membership. She tried everything to reach me. Tearful voicemails. Handwritten letters begging for forgiveness. She even got her younger sister to ambush me outside my office, pleading for a second chance. I made a terrible mistake, Sarah sobbed during one of her unannounced visits to my new apartment. I'll do anything to fix this. We can go to counseling. Please, you're the love of my life. I looked at her, really looked at her. The designer clothes had been replaced by worn jeans and a plain sweater. Her perfect highlights had grown out, showing gray roots. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She looked broken, desperate. The love of your life? I echoed. No, Sarah. I was the safe choice. The stable option. The guy who would give you the perfect life while you looked for excitement elsewhere. Well, how's the excitement working out for you now? She crumpled into herself, shoulders shaking with sobs. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. Things don't just happen, Sarah. You made choices. Hundreds of them. Every time you let him into our house. Every time you lied to my face. Every time you laughed at what a fool I was. Now you get to live with those choices. I closed the door on her tears, but something unexpected happened. Instead of satisfaction, I felt empty. The revenge had worked perfectly, better than I'd imagined. Sarah had lost everything, her job, her reputation, her friends, her comfortable life. Even her family barely spoke to her anymore. I'd orchestrated her complete destruction, just as I'd planned. But the victory tasted like ashes in my mouth. 6 months after Sarah's birthday party, I sat alone in my sleek downtown apartment, staring at the city lights below. My revenge had been flawless. Every element had fallen into place exactly as planned. Sarah had lost everything, her career, her social standing, her financial security. Brian's life was equally destroyed. Last I heard, he'd moved to Arizona to live with his parents after his wife took him for everything in the divorce. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. That night, I pulled out the box of evidence I'd collected, the surveillance photos, the bank statements, the chat logs. I spread them across my desk, trying to recapture the righteous anger that had driven me for so long. But all I could see was waste. Waste of 6 years. Waste of trust. Waste of love. My phone buzzed, a text from Sarah's sister Kate. She'd been the only one in Sarah's family to maintain any contact with her after everything fell apart. I thought you should know, the message read. Sarah's in the hospital. She took some pills last night. She's stable now, but I thought you'd want to know. I stared at the message for a long time. The old me, the me from before the betrayal, would have rushed to the hospital immediately. The vengeful me, the one who orchestrated her downfall, would have felt satisfaction. But the person I'd become felt something else entirely, a complicated mix of guilt, concern, and profound sadness. I didn't go to the hospital. Instead, I went for a long walk through the city, ending up at the small park where Sarah and I used to have picnics on Sunday afternoons. The autumn air was crisp, leaves crunching under my feet as I sat on our old favorite bench. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Kate, she's asking for you. I thought about Sarah in that hospital bed, broken by the elaborate revenge I'd engineered. I thought about the years we'd shared, the love that had turned to betrayal, the betrayal that had turned to destruction. I thought about what winning really meant. 3 days later, I walked into her hospital room. Sarah lay there, pale and thin, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes widened when she saw me, then filled with tears. I didn't think you'd come, she whispered. I sat in the chair beside her bed, maintaining a careful distance. I almost didn't. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to know how sorry I am. Not just for Brian, but for everything. For betraying you, for lying, for taking your love and trust for granted. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since discovering her infidelity. Beyond the physical changes, beyond the devastation I'd caused, I saw something I hadn't expected, genuine remorse. "Why did you do it?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months finally escaping my lips. She was quiet for a long moment. I wish I had a good answer. I was selfish. Insecure. Brian made me feel. I don't know, dangerous. Exciting. But it was all just emptiness. Cheap thrills to fill some void I didn't even understand. I threw away the only real thing in my life. I nodded slowly, absorbing her words. I wanted to destroy you, I admitted. I wanted you to feel as broken as I felt. You succeeded, she said simply. But I deserved it. We sat in silence for a while, the steady beep of hospital monitors marking time. Finally, I stood up. I'm not staying, I said. And I'm not forgiving you. But I am letting go. Sarah wiped tears from her cheeks. I understand. As I reached the door, she called out softly. Thank you for coming. And I hope someday you find happiness again. Real happiness. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. I hope you do too, Sarah. Walking out of that hospital room, I felt something shift inside me. The weight of revenge, the burden of hatred, it began to lift. Not completely, not all at once, but enough to let me breathe easier. They say living well is the best revenge. Maybe they're right. But what they don't tell you is that real revenge, the kind that destroys someone completely, also destroys a part of yourself. Sometimes winning costs more than losing. I never saw Sarah again after that day. I heard through mutual friends that she eventually moved to Seattle, started over. I hope she found whatever she was looking for. As for me, I learned that forgiveness isn't about excusing the inexcusable, it's about freeing yourself from the prison of revenge. The perfect wife's secret had shattered our world. But in the end, the real secret was that perfection itself is an illusion. We're all flawed, all capable of both love and betrayal, mercy and vengeance. The trick is learning when to hold on, when to let go, and when to walk away.